right, well, hi, and welcome to our new series where we meet some of our customers and our people to help you discover the strategies and the inspiration behind their remarkable success stories with Salesforce. So today, my guest is David Johnston. He's the General Manager of Innovation and Growth at Autism Queensland, which is the peak body providing comprehensive selection of education, therapy and support services for children and adults that are on the autism spectrum. So David, thank you for joining me today. We might dive right in.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
No problems. All right, so before we get into the detail of Autism Queensland's Salesforce journey, maybe we could start with something that's a little bit more fun. So I know that you put this question out to your team and they had a bit of fun with it. So if Autism Queensland's Salesforce journey had a theme song, what would it be and why? And if you've got a couple, feel free to share those.
I will share a couple.
Yeah, go for it.
In a previous life, I used to say that the official song of project management was Yakety Sax.
Okay.
And I think that would be unfair. I think that would be unfair to AQ in this particular case. So I had to go and ask my team.
Sure.
There was various ones. Welcome to Jungle. Eye of the Tiger was another one. I think Eye of the Tiger is probably the one that resonated with me. That was the only one that all three of us said.
Yep.
Respond to the question. And I think probably the reason for that would have been that I do think AQ was incredibly brave, taking on a transformation at the scale it did. And I think it's been incredibly persistent, to sort of push through that, in essence, 3-year journey and get to an outcome. It's a good story in that way, but I do think that's a fitting enough song, as cliche as it is.
Yeah. Look, well, as soon as I thought about your journey, that was exactly the song that came to my mind as well, funnily enough. I was even going to preempt it, but I thought, no, I'll see if that's what you say. So thanks for sharing that. All right. So perhaps that you could share with us after that introduction, a little bit more about Autism Queensland, what they are, what they do.
Yeah, look, I do struggle with that one. And I think we've probably had this conversation in the past. I guess when I try and explain AQ, the message that the intro was good, but I mean, I just kind of look at it, and I think it feeds into some of the complexities and challenges that we had that I'm sure we're going to talk about. It's a group of services that certainly have a core purpose for our clients, but in some ways they're, not always connected and they're not always the same. For example, running a school is different to running a therapy service, is different to running an employment service, is different to doing business-to-business consulting, and is different from doing sort of government-funded, programs in other organisations. And I guess AQ, what makes it unique is it's all of those things at the same time. And so it has a very disparate, breadth of what it can do and lined up against a really good common purpose. I think that's, an interesting point to know as we go into the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just in the small time that I've spent with you and your team, I've seen all of those different facets come into play. So yeah, I can understand that.
Look, I always miss a few. I know I miss our workshops that we do then. It's getting, it's growing those services even the time I've been here, and I struggle to always keep up with it.
Yeah, of course. But it's amazing to think of the breadth of services that your team actually offer. All right. So perhaps you could share with us now where you fit in at Autism Queensland.
Yeah. So I joined AQ just under 2 years ago. So early on, but not at the start in that transformation journey. I was actually hired to lead the technology team, and soon after I inherited the digital transformation program. And then, during the course of last year, I inherited innovation and growth, which really picks up project management and process management and what we do with some of our other tool sets and other markets that we can go into. So I guess I still care about the breadth of those things. So while we've stopped talking about the digital transformation program, having kind of successfully finished it, that really just transitions into a BAU world, where we need to manage all of that capability forever and hopefully continuously improve it.
Absolutely. So just on that then, what was your role in the Salesforce implementation? I know you just touched on it then, but what would that have looked like?
I guess I was the digital transformation program manager,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I was also the project manager from the AQ side for the Salesforce implementation, at least for the majority of it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so take us back if you can. How did it all get started with Salesforce at Autism Queensland? What was the driving factor for that change? What were you hoping to achieve? Just paint that picture for us.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going into the corporate knowledge, not my own at this point,
Sure.
because this happened before me. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it was, AQ had a series of, I guess, sort of CRMs, to use the term really loosely, that were, very sort of small solutions and point solutions, um, and it had no, and they were only really used in isolated pockets of the organization. So, there was a CRM that was doing a bit of work around sort of therapy and incidents, but certainly there was no visibility into those same functions that were happening in the school. And if you were an AQ client of a school and a therapist, the therapist couldn't see what was going on in the school and vice versa. And so providing that client view, that sort of total view of client, was probably one of the, with my belief is that was the main things we set out of. I think the other, big challenge that started the journey was they were incredibly inflexible. And, I've given the breadth of services, we've added new programs, multiple new programs in the time, I've been at AQ, and even since we sort of finished the Salesforce implementation.
Yeah, right.
And so the organization needs to be able to respond quickly as, the programs that the market and our partners in government and in the NDIS need us to change. We need to be able to support that. And when your tool sets to achieve that is a CRM that no one knows how to use and a plethora of spreadsheets and email, you are limited. And I think that, building an organization that can be flexible and responsive, to the needs of our clients and to the demands of our market was, a core part of the puzzle as well.
Yeah, and I think that's not uncommon with lots of organizations is you have, as you say, those point solutions to be able to fix or band-aid those little problems that you have, but having a holistic approach to how you actually work with technology across the organization is super important. And I think you're right, that scalability as well is such a key part of what you need to be able to use for the future. So with that, sorry, you go.
Not strictly a Salesforce thing, but like to share an anecdote of where the organization was coming from. Where I started, I truly believe the organisation would have struggled to say how many staff members worked here. There was a certain number from payroll, but then there was casuals. There were nowhere other than spreadsheets or maybe in an Active Directory account. We really had no view, even on a relatively simple metric about number of staff, number of joiners, number of leavers, and so. That was sort of I guess an anecdote of the maturity of the organisation as it kind of embarked on this transformation.
Yeah, and again, not uncommon to hear stuff like that. So, I guess what was it about Salesforce particularly that appealed to you to help you with managing those problems?
Yeah, so we had an external consultant that was helping us sort of form up the architecture that was going to be the digital transformation program. So they were involved in that selection. I know the organisation looked at a couple of tool sets and a couple of approaches. And, my understanding is, Salesforce, really won out because it could support that whole customer life cycle. It could give us that 360-degree view of the clients, and it was flexible and adaptable. And so therefore we could adjust it, as our organisation changes. Okay.
And how did you come about us, VISEO, being your partner here?
Yeah, well, so I'm not that I couldn't find because I don't think there was. I think VISEO was strongly recommended by the organisation that was helping AQ.
Sure.
And so I'm not sure that was ever, to be honest with you, challenged. I mean, I think it was VISEO's previous name. While I hadn't been a Salesforce customer before, I had sort of had dealings with VISEO in other organisations as well, and I sort of knew of the good work and sort of through my networks do the good work. So I guess it was something I never really questioned either as to how busy it can be there, because I think it is just seen, in our space as the leader, as I seen as the leaders. So, you know, but, I inherited a program which had some, really good staff from VISEO working on it.
Yeah.
The capabilities of that team that was supporting AQ were pretty obvious pretty quickly.
Great, thank you. All right, so how is Autism Queensland using Salesforce? I know you're using it for a lot of different things, but maybe in a bit of a snapshot, what products you're using and how you're using them.
Yeah, so look, you should probably answer that question for me from a Salesforce perspective. What I know is in the mix. So certainly the Salesforce sort of Service Cloud and sort of core platform that supports a lot of our business. That supports our contacts, our households, our view of client.
Yeah.
We have our case management, our incident management, feedback management, and our inquiry management as well, which is probably new, or is coming along. So that's a big part of the puzzle, just that core Service Cloud. We use Salesforce CPQ. That's for our quotes, our service agreements. We some other sort of that sales pipeline in essence. I guess that's not really a term we use in the not-for-profit space that often, but it makes sense to Salesforce customers, so I'll say it here. But yeah, so when we have CPQ, we have a couple of other Salesforce of ecosystem applications, or applications on applications. So those are Conga, Schedulo, and Mercury SMS.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's a pretty broad usage of Salesforce, I'd say. And yeah, I think within that CPQ, obviously that was your most recent project that you did, was implementing some of those complex billings that you do.
Yeah, and Salesforce billing. So as well. So it's funny because that's the one that you worked on.
The one that I worked on with you, the one that I definitely know about. All right. So are there any tangible or maybe even intangible results that you could share about what you've done with Salesforce?
Well, some of the things to say, we talk about staff numbers, but we also couldn't tell you client numbers. We couldn't tell you really the interactions we're having with our clients and how many and how often, and we can certainly give those numbers now. We know sort of both looking forward and sort of looking backward how many appointments we've done with our clients in each of our centres from a therapy perspective. We know, so that's been a really good starting point, just to have some visibility into the data and the workings of the organisation. A meaningful result was certainly our therapy teams, where we did break even last year. So that hasn't happened in previous years, and while we still got opportunity there to do more, to see that improvement was heartening. I guess a lot of organisations listening to this will go, well, break even is a big deal, but for not-for-profit, that's our game, right?
We want
to make sure that the revenue we're generating is going into servicing our clients, and we don't have to sort of do more than that.
100%.
We've had new programs come on board, so we were successful with the Kinder Inclusion program. So that was a new Queensland government program to, go out to kindergartens, daycare centres, and provide support to sort of early childhood educators that are, working with neurodiverse children. So we were able to, bid for and win that program all over Queensland, and then we were able to adapt our CRM, in Salesforce to support that program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really quickly. We've been able to adjust to the changes from the Queensland government around the STSS, the Special Education Support Service, which we're a provider in. And again, they changed the data we need to provide to sort of capture an inquiry in that and then respond to it. And we were able to adjust the system quickly to support that as well. We know what's happening in a Salesforce billing perspective. So we had 635 automated invoices generated sort of through January, which, any automated invoices was a great outcome, because none of them were automated before. So 635. And really what we saw in Salesforce billing, and this is probably for your own personal interest as much as anyone that listens to this,
Yeah.
in our first month, we had about a 20% error rate. So of the invoices that were generated, about 20% of them need to be sent back. And then
Sure.
the next month was 5%. In January, it was 0%.
Wow.
And so staff are sort of learning how to use the tool and how to use it successfully. And when you're getting down to a 0% error rate, the great news about that is you can, I guess, automatically put those invoices in front of your clients now because you kind of know they're going to be right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that gets to unlock other additional efficiencies that we can go after as well.
Yeah, the efficiencies come from here, right? That's a great ramping up of all of the work that we did. So that's great to hear. All right. Well, what I might do now is just change pace a little bit. So obviously with any tech implementation comes challenges. So could you talk to me about some of the challenges that you've overcome when you're taking an NFP through a large scale transformation?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some of the I think that the big challenges came from breadth of what the organization did, but also the really tight resource constraints that it had, because in the end, sort of running a digital transformation is not core business for our not-for-profit, and I know a lot of organizations will say that they are, capital constrained or financial resource constrained, but that is at an extreme in a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
We're not designed to have lots of money sitting in the bank to fund these sort of programs.
Yep.
And we have a really small team. Being involved in other organizations and other transformations of scale, and that have, more business analysts than we would have total people involved in our digital transformation.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's really interesting is just the sort of the really part-time nature that some staff or some managers and leaders in our organization would have been involved in the transformation, because they all have a day job.
Yeah, of course.
In addition to kind of the work that they were being asked to do. And probably the last challenge I sort of noted, the last sort of thought bubble I think really had to overcome was just the fact that the organization wasn't good at doing change. It's not like it's coming from a place where, it's used to doing large scale software development projects and it's used to launching new things to market. I mean, it couldn't really change its processes because it was so constrained by the technology systems that it had. And so because it had that for so long, it just wasn't used to making lots of changes. And so even trying to move from that, and the changes it had made were big ones. Like I replaced this last CRM with this new CRM, and it was all big and scary and hard. And to get an organization that's kind of thinking like that into a world where actually, we can do things quickly, we can do lots of little changes, we can, in essence, and we probably do, change something in our Salesforce platform pretty much every week.
Yep.
That was a real big mindset change for the organization. I think that, that did form possibly some of the, the challenges we did in far as taking on an MVP or our first phase of Salesforce was probably too big when we look back on it. And that's because of the mindset we were coming from that, we only get one chance at this.
Yes.
And it has to be big and great and perfect day one.
Yeah. And those are all such valid points. Change management is difficult, especially when people have always been used to doing something the same way. That one bite at the cherry kind of mentality as well. It's change to think about continuous improvement and how you can actually incrementally change. You don't need to bite off everything all at once. And oftentimes that makes it incrementally harder to do. So I really think that those are challenges that are not just alone to your organization, but that everyone does face. Yeah.
No, I'm sure that's true. I think that you just have to overlay the fact that, in addition to all those challenges, your financial resources and your human resources are really, really constrained. I know organizations say they're all constrained. It was really, really constrained.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. But I
think
will.
That has its own flow-on effect, doesn't it? Because, in some organizations, I mean, you'll come in and there will be a project management methodology and templates. There's none of that here. There'll be a change management methodology and templates, and then there's none of that here. So you're coming into a place that's just it's not sort of project ready. And that's that in itself was an interesting challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, speaking from experience, you've got the best bang for buck with your team you could possibly get. They're an amazing team.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
All right. Well, maybe let's talk about the other challenging beast that you have to tackle, which is working with the NDIS. So what sort of challenges do you have to work through or overcome when you're working with the NDIS?
Yeah, I mean, like the NDIS is, it's a big part of AQ's
Mm.
business. It's not necessarily the biggest part.
Okay.
Because but it is certainly one of the biggest ones. I think the NDIS, like the other government agencies that we're involved in, I mean, they're changing their businesses and maturing as well. And the NDIS in particular somewhat has a reputation of you know, being announced and then being worked as we go. And they do have a high level of change, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's just because the program has in essence been stood up
Yeah.
over the past sort of 6 years, and there's still a high level of change. And if you look forward with the NDIS review and the other reviews have been, in this space, the Royal Commission, Aged Care, you know, um, there's still going to be a lot of change in those programs. So I try. Personally, I'm not too negative about that. I've kind of come to accept it. I think there is rhythms that they've tried to put in place around changes to the price guide. I'm sure everyone in every organisation that engages with the NDIS would love to see those be different. But in the end, we just need to accept that that's the world that we work in, and we need to set ourselves up with our processes, with our systems, with our people to be able to react quickly when these changes happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I think, I don't want to, I don't want to kind of, in some ways, call it this because, that same thing happens in other programs we're involved in at the state government level, as it kind of should, because we want them to be improving those programs as well.
Absolutely.
And as service providers that are engaging, we want to be able to respond to try and make those as successful as possible. So I think we just need to accept that, with the NDIS, with providers, there's going to be a lot of change.
Yeah.
We can be, paralyzed waiting for that to standardize, and we might be waiting for a fair while. Or alternatively, we accept that's the world and, just start getting good at it. And I think the advantage, I guess we've had going through this journey, in addition to, yes, shiny new systems and, much better data, and yes, we have systems that are now flexible. We have skills in the organization to adjust those systems where we need to. And we have an organization that's able to kind of accept these changes much better than probably could before.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, with that in mind, what advice would you have to others about setting up their Salesforce project for success? Especially if they're from a not-for-profit or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's, we have sort of touched on a few of those challenges. I guess we've got to start overcoming some of those. So I think, building that core stakeholder group, that coalition of the willing, not only at sort of your executives and GM levels, you certainly need that, but probably by the point that you're standing up a digital transformation, you've probably got some board and executive buy-in for that. Because you've got some funding. So now we need the whole organization to kind of get on the bus. And I guess in the not-for-profit space, people have to kind of do that in addition to their normal job. And so you really need to find those people that are going to be, keen to get involved in, that they understand the systems of the organizations. You need to start, leveraging those people. I mean, one of those team members that you speak about in my team wasn't in my team when the digital transformation started.
Yep.
She was an administrator in the school. She'd been there a number of years. She, was a really knowledgeable person on AQ and what it did. And she had a good systems thinking mind. And being able to sort of identify someone like that, bring them in, take them on the journey of the project, sort of support them, develop knowledge and skills, leaves the organization in a better place. And you need that. Plus, you need the smaller, involvement where the stakeholders, the people willing to, have a go at the change and, and show the organisation the behavior. So I think that building that sort of coalition of interested and excited stakeholders and trying to find a way to engage them. So is a pretty fundamental part of the puzzle. In addition to the normal things we'd expect to see from, successful programs, stand-ups, about having a clear view of where you're getting to and, having some, clear outcomes that you're trying to achieve and being able to link, some of those outcomes and outputs that you're getting for the program to actual benefits that you're trying
Totally.
to get it. And that's not always going to be an easy thing,
Yeah.
in any organization, but also in a not-for-profit, because it's not used to having necessarily that level of financial discipline and that level of maturity. But, when the going kind of gets hard, as it almost invariably will at some point, in a 3-year transformation, you need to be able to, you know, kind of show that there's a really good reason that we got
Yeah.
ourselves into this journey, and just to persist through it because, because there was a reason we started and we're going to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So I guess this has been a really big program of work for you and your team. So how do you reflect on it personally, and what have you learned from this?
Um, yeah, look, I mean, I was definitely tired at the end of last year.
Sure.
I think I was sharing that just before we started,
Yeah.
how tired I felt when I got to Christmas. And anyway, I guess for context too, that we, really officially closed that digital transformation in December. Um, and so um, it was, I guess personally, I found it really rewarding though. I mean, apart from, it being, tiring and long and stressful, I mean, how often, do you get to have a leadership role in a multi-year transformation that gets to the outcome,
Yeah.
in the time that you're there? That seems really rare. How often can you see, do you get to have a leadership role in an organization that has made the changes in maturity and, changes in systems that, AQ clearly has over the past, 3 or so years. So yeah, it's been an incredibly rewarding part of my career. I'm kind of glad that I get to see the next journey of that too, the next steps in that journey as well, where we, turn that into just the way we normally work as an organization, where we, continuously improve and drive more benefit around, your Salesforce and the other platforms that we implemented, during the program. And, we get to kind of keep seeing the organization, helping people. And I guess that's a really nice, rewarding part of the NFP journey, I guess, as well. That, you know, in addition to, seeing the programs finish and seeing this, how often do you get to be in that sort of role and just see so closely the impact you're having on people's lives, that being so obviously beneficial? So I
Yeah.
think that in itself has been, an incredible part of the journey.
Yeah, I can really relate and resonate to that. I used to work for Cerebral Palsy League, so I really understand, the fundraising efforts that we did every day and how it changes the lives and impacts people. So, yeah, that resonates strongly with me. All right, well, we're getting ready to wrap up now. Thank you so much for your time today. But before we do you have any final thoughts that others in the Salesforce ecosystem may benefit from hearing from you?
Look, I'd probably like to hear what the other people in Salesforce system could help me with, to be honest with you. Um, but I do think that, um, you know, really thinking about some real world scenarios kind of helps, and being willing to ask some silly questions. Um, that there is often a reason that, there's usually a reason why something has grown up the way it has in an organization. And if you're not brave enough, in roles like ours and, business analysts and people involved in programs, if we're not brave enough to try to ask the silly question about, why did it end up this way, or why do we do it this way, you might be missing out on some really key, um, capability that we need to at least understand or change or create. And, if we don't have that level of sort of bravery and willingness to dive in and ask that silly question, then we can cause ourselves sort of rework or other problems in the future. So I guess that's my parting piece of advice: just be willing enough to ask, brave enough to ask the silly questions.
Yeah, don't make assumptions, ask questions. I love that. All right. Well, that is awesome, David. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's really been an amazing journey for both of our organisations working together over the past few years. We're really proud from a VISEO perspective of how far we can see that Autism Queensland has come as well. And we are really excited to continue working with you and wish you lots of success for the future with all of your continuous improvements.
Yeah, and likewise, Beck. I mean, yourself personally, the broader team at VISEO that's been on that journey with us, we appreciate what you've done for the organisation. There's no doubt that the Salesforce and VISEO partnership has improved AQ, and so therefore probably will improve the lives of Queenslanders, and that's a nice feather in the cap. In addition to getting the invoices paid occasionally.
Also important. Well, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.